next guests have quickly established themselves as the busiest, most formidable writing duo the thriller genre has to offer. From their popular Tier 1 series, an upcoming spin off franchise, a new faith based series at Tyndale, and Webb Griffin's Presidential Agent series, which they've recently signed on to take over, these co authors are pumping out books faster than anyone. And to top it off, they're both really great guys. Brian and Jeff, welcome to Thriller Talk.
Good to be here, you guys. So great to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Listen, before we get too deep into things, I just want to go back to the beginning for a minute, if you don't mind. Tell the story of how you guys met, how you decided to team up and write your first book.
Well, this is a perfect venue for us to talk about that because we met at Thriller Fest. So Brian and I were in the same debut author class 100 years ago, seven. I don't know what it was. It's been a little while, and we met there. I usually when I tell this story, I try to do an embarrassing thing where I talk about Brian being a submariner, off in the corner crying because he's so socially inept. But the truth is, I was the guy that this was my first time there, and Wendy and I were up in the room getting ready to come to our first cocktail party, and I had the program out, and I'm flipping through looking for other military veterans because I know it doesn't shock you to find I'm not that good socially, so I was looking for people that were military, and I was like memorizing their faces, right? So I was like, well, that's a guy I can talk about something with. So as we were at this cocktail party, and Brian was sitting by himself, but I'm sure he had just finished entertaining a throng of people. But he was sitting by himself, and I immediately recognized him, went over and talked to him for a few minutes, and we formed an instant friendship. Had nothing to do with business, had nothing to do with writing. We share the same family values. We are family-oriented people. Our kids were the same age. In fact, Larkin and Emma have become friends over the years. So that was sort of how we met. And the writing thing, though, I was the reluctant partner on that. Maybe I'll let Brian tell that story so that he doesn't roll his eyes when I embellish.
Isn't that such a sweet way to say that he stalked me using the ITW Facebook? He's like, can't you just see him like looking through the book like, that guy, I think I can talk to that guy.
I gotta get his autograph.
But this is, all kidding aside, this is the beautiful thing about ITW. And both of you know this, Kimberly especially, right? It is a fraternal organization where it's just about getting together with like-minded authors and meeting each other, but then also helping each other in their careers. And I think Jeff and I, if I could take a little liberty to say so, we might be the poster children of the ITW collaboration model, because like Jeff said, we were both writing independently. And then because of ITW and like Jeff said, our friendship and, getting into talking about the business of writing and our interests and the like, we just found out we had so much in common. And, having come from a military background, collaboration and teamwork really is more than just, a buzzword. It's the true mantra of how the military functions. Without teamwork, without collaboration, there is no military. And so we took that same sort of model to our approach. And, I think that it was natural for us to fall into that. And as much as we enjoyed writing individually, you do miss some of those times where you're like, gosh, I just wish I had somebody that I could bounce this idea off of or pick the phone up and call. And that's really what we have now, is a true partnership.
And which one of you suggested
it? Well, so I suggested it. This is
She's gonna make you tell the story. She knows the answer. She's gonna make
She's gonna make us tell. So, I said, Jeff, with your naval special warfare background, and my submarine background, maybe it could be cool to like do this SEALs and subs, like collaboration. Maybe we do a book about SEALs and subs. And he's like, yeah, that sounds interesting. He's like, tell you what, if you want to work on that, I'm happy to be a reference for you. He's like, you can bounce ideas off me. I don't know about co-author. I don't know how that would work because, what are we supposed to do? Like each work on sentences, and I still don't know how that could work. But I'm happy to help. But I was persistent. I wouldn't leave him. I was like a mosquito. I wouldn't leave him alone. I'm buzzing around, buzzing in his ear. I think we could make this work. Tell you what, why don't we start it? We'll write a few chapters. Here's the premise of what I was thinking about. And I could see the wheels turning. It's like, oh, this could work.
And it really was like that. Like I'm not going to lie. When he asked first, I did flat out say, yeah, absolutely not. And it wasn't personal. It was just like most people that we talk to that ask us how we do it. They still are like, how does that work? I just didn't see how it logistically could work. Having written by myself for so long, I just didn't know what it would look like. I knew other people did it, but I didn't. So I did tell him no flat out, and I did offer to help him with it. And then we started brainstorming it together, and it started to gel into a real plot, a real story arc, and I started getting interested in it. And so then he was like, well, ask again. He's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, no, I just don't see how it'll work. I'll help you as much as you can. But he's a great salesman. The way he finally closed the deal was, we had, at this point, he knew how much I loved this story, and we had arced the whole thing out. And he goes, look, let's do this. Let's just try this. Let's write 5 chapters. And if it's working, we'll keep going. And if it's not, you get to keep the story. And I was like, and he knew I loved this story by this point. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So we started writing, and we, I don't know, went past 5 chapters in no time. And like 3.5 months later, the first draft was done, the fastest either of us has ever created a story. And I don't think we never really talked about it again, right? We didn't stop at 5 chapters and say, what do you think? We just kept on going, and now, however many books later, we're still doing it. He trapped me. That's the story.
You can throw us in his face, Brian, by the way, every time you guys like disagree on something and Jeff's like, I think we should go this way. And you're like, you didn't want to write together when we started. Okay, we're going this way. Is that like something you get to use and bring up, or no?
I should, now that you mention it. Yeah. No, the weird thing is, and you know, you guys are gonna roll your eyes when I say this, but for some reason, we don't seem to have that problem. And so everybody always likes to ask us, what do you do when you have a big disagreement? How do you guys fight? Or how do you deal with that? And the truth is, like, I think it's because from the very beginning of the process, we sort of said, all right, let's take the ego out of this. And again, that goes back to sort of our military lineage. You know, it's not about my idea or Jeff's idea, or I wrote this or Jeff wrote that. It's really about our book. The finished product just wants to be something that we created, and we're as happy as we can be about it. And Jeff and I sometimes joke about it. You know, we're both parents, and you know, we say to ourselves, like, you know, Jeff would never say, well, Wendy, this kid is your kid, and the middle kid is my kid, and the youngest kid is your kid. You wouldn't divide up your kids like that. And so we look at our books that same way. It sounds sort of corny, but like, the book is just like our kid, and we just want it to be the best kid or book that it can be. And so it's just a process where we just talk through, like, what's the best solution, and that's how we resolve all the not conflict, but all the questions or ideas that we're not sure.
On the rare occasion that there's like, you know, he's done something or I've done something, and the other person is like, well, I maybe go in a different direction. We usually talk about it for 2 or 3 minutes. And if the other person seems like they feel strongly about it, there's so much trust that it's like, look, you feel strongly, I trust you. Let's try it. Because as writers, you know, you can always go back and change it, right? So, but I can't think of a time when we've gotten to that point. It's like, look, you feel strongly, let's do it your way, and then we'll see what happens. I think every time we've done that, we've never changed it. So part of it is just a trust. And then, like Brian is saying, that, you know, military mission before self, it's really about the mission. It's not about who does what. So
there is one sort of funny story, which is, it was on Sons of Valor. We'd written something early in the book about Kasim. He's the antagonist, and
Jeff already knows what it is too, by the way. Look at that.
Yes. Well, he does, because it was such a
lesson
thorn in
for
our...
all writers. What he's going to tell you, this is whether you write together or write individually. This is a writing lesson. This is for Craft Fest. So
yes, keep this little tip. So we're in the beginning, we had written something about Kasim and his work schedule. And so as the plot developed, we kept saying, well, Kasim needs to be back because he's got this meeting in 2 weeks. And so we're trying to finesse the plot all around. How do we cram it into 2 weeks and all this stuff? And we wasted so much time. We read so many things to move it all around. And we're talking, we're like, well, this just doesn't feel right. What do we do? The light bulb went off. And just like, dude, we can change it.
He only has a meeting in 2 weeks because we said so.
Yeah. So we had boxed ourselves into this stupid little position that was all fictional. So, remember as a writer, just because you wrote it down doesn't mean you can't delete it, doesn't mean you can't change it. Everything is fair game for deletion or revision. And I think that's probably the key to our success too, is we look at that and we really take that to heart. Wouldn't you say, Jeff? Like everything is fair game for change or
Absolutely.
Well, I absolutely love Dark Intercept. I found it a really unique thriller. And I really enjoyed how, even though there was some running and gunning, which I expect from you guys, there was a sort of deep, sophisticated philosophical approach to the inner struggles. And I'd love to hear if you're going to keep delving into that side of things in this series and why you chose to.
Yeah. So Dark Intercept, the Shepherd series with Tyndale House, was a really cool opportunity for Brian and I to sort of combine a lot of things that we're passionate about in one place. We love what we write. We love Sons of Valor. We love Tier 1. We love all the stuff that we've been doing with Tom Colgan. But as you know, family and faith are big things for us in our personal lives. And Kimberly, as you know, I lead a men's military ministry here in Tampa, which is something I'm very, very passionate about, dealing with people who, like me, had a really significant crisis in their faith as a result of their combat service and the things that they saw, the things that they did that made them say, why would God let this happen? And so having an opportunity to blend those things together, which, as you can imagine, is quite a challenge, right? You don't want to be preachy, you don't want to lose the action thriller aspect, but you don't want to overshadow the message. So it was a challenge. But yes, this is a series. Dark Intercept is the first in a series. The themes that we established there, the two major themes I would say, are crisis and faith. How do you find your way back to faith when life, whether it's through your military service or other loss or tragedy, a loss of a child, all kinds of horrible things, when you get taken off that path, how do you find your way back? And then we also have this kind of fun, more speculative supernatural element where we worked very hard to frame a supernatural spiritual warfare element into an action thriller, but keep it within the confines of biblical reality. So, and what I mean by that is it's not that there's not speculative elements, but there's nothing that we've written that you can go to the Bible and say, no, it couldn't happen that way. And so it was really cool. My background was writing supernatural thrillers. When I met Brian, that's what I was writing before we did the military thrillers. Brian has done some amazing sci-fi stuff. And so being able to pull everything in together and combine it with something that we personally feel very strongly about and yet still be entertaining, what an opportunity. So we love Tyndale House. We love that they've given us this opportunity, that they asked us to do this for them. So we hope we write it forever and ever, because it really is fun. Really, really fun.
All right, I'm gonna circle back because you keep giving the really good answers. Like we know the origin story now. We know Jeff, you stalked Brian, and Brian laid the honey trap, and it all worked out. But let me ask you, seriously, I get the whole each book is our kid thing. I'm also married and have 6 kids, and I know for a fact my wife, when a kid's bad, they're my kid. It's our kid, but that's your son over there, right? So let's just be real for a second. There's so many different co-author relationships out there. You guys are truly unique, right? From Catherine Coulter and JT Ellison, or Mark Graney and Rip Rawlings. Like, there's people that write together but have their own separate careers. And I know you guys started that way, but when did you realize that you were actually like stuck together forever and we're going to work together on all these different series that you have?
Well, I mean, I think there was a point where we said, are we ready to go all in on this? But we've never felt like we were stuck together. And I think we've had several conversations where we said, could we go, let's just put it in my perspective. If I said to Jeff, hey, do you mind if I take time and write something I'm interested in on my own? He'd be like, sure, dude, no problem, do whatever you want. And vice versa for me. But here's the thing. We have a lot of fun. So it's really fun doing it together. And now that we've sort of perfected our method, we've churned out a bunch of books. So we've really had time to hone this. And it would be hard. It's hard to write by yourself because we don't have writer's block. Our solution to writer's block is, I start to get stuck. I pick up the phone. I call Jeff. Okay, here's what I wrote. Here's where I'm going. Let's brainstorm our way out of this little mousetrap. And we do. And so there's very little wasted time. And so there's the fun element, there's the efficiency element, and also now, I'm just being real. Like, we've signed a bunch of deals with these publishers, and they have an expectation that we're going to continue to deliver for them, and we want to. We like these series, so I just don't see that happening. Going away anytime soon. So
Jeff gave you that look, by the way, when he'd be like, sure, man, go write your own thing. He literally had that look like, we got like 18 different series. You got no time for that right now. Like, I literally saw the eye twitch, right when you said.
Well, and the only other thing that he forgot to mention was after a couple bottles of wine, he tricked me into signing that non-disclosure. Or the non-compete, I should say. So that's a factor for me as well.
So would you guys talk absolutely every day?
We used to answer that question by saying, well, when we're in the middle of a rough draft of a project, we do. But now we're always in the middle of a rough draft of a project, so now we always do. When we're in the middle of a first draft, it's not unusual for us to talk 5 or 6, maybe even 7 or 8 times a day, especially, and you guys are writers, so you get this. You know how the first third of the book takes about half the time, the second 2/3 takes the last half. That last third of the book is when this thing gets a life of its own and has so much angular momentum that it's unstoppable. When we're in that phase, we're on the phone like every other hour. It's like, wait a minute. So I had this other idea. What if we do this? And you got to stop him because we already talked about something else and vice versa. So yes, every single day, maybe not always on the weekends. We do try to take weekends off at least a couple times a month. But other than that, yeah, pretty much every day.
That's great. I love the fact that your work always brings a very good authenticity or verisimilitude to the page, especially with military operations, given your backgrounds. What aspects of military life and duty do you feel is often misunderstood by the public?
Ooh, that's a great question. Actually, I think, Jeff, maybe you should tee that one up, because this was fundamental. Well, I'll start. I'll just say, when we thought about spinning off the Chunk Redmond character and standing up this Sons of Valor Tier 1 shared world series, we said, the challenge is Chunk is not like a John Dempsey. He does not have this tragic backstory, a bunch of angst, skeletons in the closet. He's not a brooding, hero. How do we write this guy? And Jeff said, he's more representative of the people that I worked with in Naval Special Warfare than a lot of the other characters you read. So a lot of discussion went into how do we make him appealing and how can he carry a series?
Yeah, and I think the answer was pretty easy once we delved a little deeper into it. We went back to the initial conversation we had when we started Tier 1, which was, you want to get the tech right, you want to get the weapons right, you want to get the aircraft right. And Kimberly, you and I have talked about stuff like this all the time, right? And brainstorm stuff together, how to get things right, because your readers expect it and demand it. But I don't think that that's what makes these books come alive. I think what makes them come alive is being true to the characters, the military characters that we write. We fight very hard, even in Dempsey, who is a bit of a superhero, obviously. Even in Dempsey, we try not to write that superhero, indestructible, can take 10 bullets, kills every bad guy, wins every engagement. We work very hard to paint the picture of our heroes as ordinary people who are doing something extraordinary, because that's what makes the men and women that I worked with in special warfare and in other task forces so incredible. What's amazing about them is how ordinary they are, not how extraordinary they are. They're just regular people coaching their kids little league when they're at home, taking the trash to the curb, picking up milk on the way home. They're family people. It's not like you see on CBS SEAL Team, which I love that show, but it's like every marriage is in crisis every single week, and it's just not like that. These are ordinary people. You see them at the grocery store, you would not go, that's a SEAL. You wouldn't. You would think they were anything but that. And so we started from the very beginning with this idea of our authenticity needs to come through the characters and through the relationships between the characters, which means they have to be flawed, but motivated by something real, whether it's patriotism, love of family, and in the case of Chunk, love of his team. The Chunk character, unlike Dempsey, who is trying to save the world from this evil that destroyed his brothers, Chunk just wants to take care of his brothers because he loves being a SEAL. He gets up every day and goes, I get to go do this again. And so it's a very different character, but like Brian was saying, very true to the people that we've served with. And that makes it fun. And I hope that's why these series so far have resonated with people, because the people just seem real. So I think that's probably the best answer to your question is, where's the authenticity important? It's in the relationships and the people, I think.
So, I mean, people might have noticed I'm drinking two different Andrews and Wilson mugs today, right?
Woohoo!
And my Sons of Valor coffee.
Yes.
But
Thanks
you
for
guys
the
recently,
placement.
yeah, well, of course, and it's great coffee, by the way. You guys recently put out a line of merchandise. Just tell fans real quick, where do they get that, and are you going to be adding things in the future?
So we have a gear store. So if you go to our main website, which is andrews-wilson.com, you can click on the menu bar. There's a link for gear. And that goes to another site, which is andrews-wilson-gear.com. And so we have mugs and tumblers and some t-shirts and caps and stuff like that. And with each new book, we'll do sort of limited edition, mugs and stuff. So that Sons of Valor mug that you held up there, Ryan, like that's just a limited edition one for this Sons of Valor launch. And the coffee is a limited edition specialty blend. That's with the partnership with Bone Frog Coffee, which is really great veteran-owned organization started by Tim Cruikshank, who's a SEAL. And it's located in Washington State. And it's just a small batch roastery, but they pick great coffee beans and they roast it to perfection. And so, I think, as Jeff and I have been doing this business of trying to tell veteran stories and promote our work, we've found that we've met a lot of really cool people. And Tim Cruikshank's a great example of that. It is really tough to start a business today. It's very competitive. And I think when you leave the military, you're used to this structure. You're used to having this team and this entire organization that you feel a part of. And then you separate and you're like by yourself, and that can be a daunting proposition. And so what we've tried to do, the Sons of Valor blend is the perfect example, is link up with other veterans who are starting businesses and try to help each other. It's like a team lift. We help promote their coffee. They help promote our books. And maybe together, we can all find traction.
And what's really cool about the Bone Frog thing, Ryan, is that it achieves our third goal, which is we always want to support veteran charities. And in this case, because of our background in particular, we're interested in supporting naval special warfare charities when we can. And so Bone Frog already, a significant amount of all their revenue that doesn't go back into the business, supports 5 major NSW charities. And so we were attracted to them and helping lift them up anyway. And then when they had the idea of doing the specialty blended coffee, we have the opportunity to say, okay, well, whatever our share of that is, we want all of that to go into these NSW charities that support the widows and the children left behind when some of the SEAL warriors make the ultimate sacrifice. And so it's like there's no downside to it. We're lifting up each other in veteran businesses. We're supporting charities that support our teammates and their families. But it's the way things should be. And it's what, just to circle back, it's what I love about ITW is how it's about lifting one another up. You guys asked me a few years ago to write something about Thriller Fest for the website. And I said, it's writers helping writers, which is what we always say. But it really is like legit is. There's so many people, John Land and, Lee Child, you guys who have helped us in our careers. We now work really super hard to help other people that are coming up. And I love that about ITW. It's got a very military feel to it where, we are a community and we take, whether there might even be people there that you don't love them. They wouldn't be your best friend, but they're part of your community. So you're going to lift them up. And I think that's really, really cool.
So I wonder sometimes if you guys are a little bit psychic because you always have the most timely and sort of forward-thinking plots and threats. What issues in the world concern you today?
I mean, I think I'm pretty concerned about this idea of relative truth, and what I mean by that is over the last few years, and I think this has been maybe weaponized to a large extent, partially through social media, but also through state sponsored propaganda, which is this idea that, well, there is no truth. It's just whatever you think it is.
Mhm.
And that kind of empowers people to some very bad behavior and also promoting, whatever theory that they think is true. So if you have sort of a moralistic, you can either have a moral compass or you can use the scientific method. There has to be some basis for why you believe what you believe. And if there's not, if it's just this gut feel or because Putin told me so or whatever, whoever it is, right? Then we have this real tribalism and factionalism that starts to surface. And I think we're starting to see that now. I don't know how to get out of it, Jeff, but
Yeah, it's a cultural thing that has been capitalized on, as Brian is implying, by nation states, right? So as our Western culture started to embrace this relativism, players like North Korea, China, Russia, they're jumping all over that. They know
yeah.
how to weaponize that against us. And so it becomes less of a cultural thing for guys like us, at least, and more of a geopolitical thing. Look at what's happened. Look at what happened again in the Ukraine, right? And obviously, are we hugely excited that it came right out of Collateral? Yeah, that was cool. But it was also scary because it seems so predictable based on what we know about Russia and how Russia acts, based on what we know about Russian geopolitics of elevating themselves by lowering others and all these things that we talked about when we wrote our book. We saw that unfold even after Crimea. Just recently, we saw this happen again on the Ukraine border where they stood up the troops and they moved lots of stuff into the Black Sea, and we responded. And it's like so predictable. And it's allowed to happen because of some of these cultural influences that empower Russia, China, North Korea. We're supposed to fight about who's the good guys and bad guys in our culture, while behind the scenes they all laugh and get ready for the next invasion. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing. There needs to be a truth, and we need to share it, and it needs to be available to us as citizenry so we can vote appropriately and make sure that our country is defended. It's scary. I agree with Brian completely. I also don't know what the answer to it is. Obviously, the geopolitical response is not the same as the cultural response, but I don't think you can have one without the other.
And I think, we wrote about this in Collateral. It's been sort of a theme through the last 3 books in Tier 1, which is this idea that the Russian mentality is very much a zero-sum mentality. And I feel like from the time I was a kid playing soccer, growing up here in the United States, we've always embraced the win-win mentality. That's a very American cultural phenomenon, win-win. And I think we sort of made efforts to shun this idea of zero sum. We always tried to find solutions where, in business and in politics, we tried to find a solution where everybody can come out ahead. But now I feel like the zero sum mentality is starting to creep into the US, and that concerns me because that's not our way,
Right.
So
Well, let me ask you, because we're running out of time. I mean, hard to believe that you guys are, busy and have more stuff to do today. But so a couple quick hitters, right? We've touched on Dark Intercept, which I read. It's so fantastic, by the way. I really love that one.
Thanks, Ron.
I knocked this one out a couple months ago. Dying for the first in the Webb Griffin series. Guys, it's hard writing reviews for all your stuff. I have to take note of what's happening where and different. How do you keep all your projects straight? Seriously, what's the secret to that?
Well, one of the things that used to make it easy was we could just focus on one at a time.
Right.
And that made it really, really easy. Now there is a little bit of a struggle of overlap, but I think that if we had these opportunities a few years ago, it might have been more of a struggle than it is. But now so much of what we write about in all the series and these characters, they become so real to us. It's like, I don't ever start to talk about how Connor's doing great on the guitar. It's like, oh no, that's Jack. No, of course I know it's Jack. He's my kid, right? Again, not to play back that parent-child metaphor too much, but it is like that. And so we did worry about it. I can tell you, we worried, am I going to be writing Dempsey and oh no, that's something Chunk would do. But it really hasn't happened because as the characters sort of inform the story, and I know that resonates with both of you guys because you're writers. The characters really can inform your writing. And as these writing Sons of Valor, since it's a spin-off series, we sort of already knew Chunk. We had to grow him and develop him, but we know him and we know what he's like and we know what his team's like. So I'll let Brian answer if he has a different perspective, but I haven't really found that to be a struggle with the crossover. Now the logistics is tough. When you're finishing a rough draft and you're in the middle of developmental edits for a completely different series, and you get that email that says, "Hey, sending you the first round of developmental edits for this third series," and then you're like, "Okay, so who writes what?" And like, it is very hard to DE in the morning and write something else in the afternoon. So we sort of have to divide and conquer. And so I'll spin off, and Brian keeps writing while I do a pass of DE. Then I go back to the work in progress and he does the other DE. So the logistics is difficult, but not the characters. Brian, do you find it difficult with the characters?
Yeah, I think either we both have a psychopathy, okay, or this is how it is for other writers too. Because for us, it's like they become real people, and so we could never confuse them because it's just like dudes that we know, our friends, our colleagues. They're just who they are. So we would never mix them up.
So fascinating, by the way.
Yeah, I know the dynamic between you two is incredible and so unusual. I hope you guys realize just how special what you have is, because it truly is.
Well, the secret is that Brian's actually a paid actor. I'm actually a solo writer, and this was part of my branding. There is no Brian.
You must not sleep at all, Jeff.
Oh, let me tell you, I couldn't do any. You asked earlier about writing independently, and I meant to chime in and say we used to talk about it a lot early on, but I don't think we even talk about it anymore because I'm not even sure I can envision that. Not that I couldn't do the writing, but like Brian said, I'm not sure I would enjoy it. Like, we're like 10-year-old kids. Like, when we're on the phone plotting these things out, this is not, we're got our spreadsheets and our folders and we're out. It's nothing like that. It's like a couple of jackasses in the backyard with their toy guns and what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And it's just so much fun. Like, I would be so sad to have that taken away. I can't imagine.
Yeah, neither can I. So writing a good novel is really hard work and requires a bundle of skills. And if you were talking to an aspiring author today, what advice would you guys give them?
Well, I think, we've learned that all writing is rewriting. And, that sounds so simple, but it's really paradigmatic to like the whole process. So you have to embrace this idea that, and we told that little anecdotal story about the meeting, and how, oh, well, can we change it? I want to come back to that here just because you can apply it to the whole process, which is start out in the morning, just try to get words on the page because it doesn't have to be perfect the first time through. And in fact, what we've learned through our processes is that the good stuff doesn't come out right away. The good stuff comes from once you get the words on the page and you start to get that germ of idea, then the really creative things start to happen because everybody needs a starting point, right? So you don't climb a ladder by taking a giant step to the top of the ladder. You have to go up all the rungs to get there. And so that's just that layer. You have that rough draft. Just look at it as, climbing that first couple steps of the ladder or putting a layer of paint down on the canvas. You can't do the fine detail work or get to the really, really cool stuff until you do that. So don't worry about getting it perfect right away. Just put words on the page and then go back and read and fix.
I think that's what I talk with young writers about the most is they spend so much time trying to get that perfect paragraph, that perfect chapter. It's going to change anyway. You're just spinning your wheels. I think the difference between a novelist who actually publishes a book and the ones that start and don't is the second group finishes. Like, there are so many people that have this work in progress that they talk about on social media and they're like, they started it 9 years ago. It's like, dude, you just need to finish this. Like, you can't even start writing it till you finish it. You got to finish the rough draft. And so I say that to people all the time. If you have a brilliant idea that's pivotal and you want to go back and tweak it, okay. But in general, you need to move forward every day, a few pages a day, and you got to make it like a job, even if you have a full-time job. And that means you can't say, oh, I'm going to write Saturdays. Saturday's my writing day. Okay. I write for a living. I can't write for 8 hours. Okay. Nobody can do that. And so you're better off writing a little bit every day so that you're not spending half of your writing time getting back in the zone, getting back in the character's head, getting back in the story arc. Hour or two, hour and a half, 4 or 5 days a week, you can create a novel in a half a year. It's amazing how much you can do if you just put that little bit of time. So it's the discipline of making it a job. And then, like Brian was saying, you just got to get the words on the page, finish the book, then go back and make it perfect.
So I know you guys work 24/7. It seems to get everything you do done. But what do you do for fun in your free time?
Well, for
Well, we got families.
yeah,
I was gonna say, do you even know what free time is anymore?
Yeah.
well, I'll tell you, you got to make time for it, because what you find is that, and that's another good lesson for writers, is if you are so consumed by it, eventually your writing suffers. Like if you've got a family, you got to be spending time with them. I, in fact, just last night for Wendy's birthday, she and I did a 24-hour getaway to Clearwater Beach and celebrated. And so Brian was like, I got today, don't worry. And so we do that where there's two of us, so we can do that for each other. But we spend a lot of time with our families. That's where we find our joy. I run this ministry that keeps me a little bit busy on Saturday mornings and Thursday mornings. And then I'm doing stuff with my family, whatever it is. We all have a great time. They're only little once, so.
And this, again, you're going to say these guys are so trite, but this is fun. Like, I like this job. So, I spent a long time trying to figure out where can I have a career that I'm enjoying every minute of it. And, this is it for me. So I love the writing. That's really fun for me. I love the podcasts. I love the interviews. I love hanging out with Jeff. I love talking plot. So like, I end the day, and I'm feeling like I had a fun day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I love it. Well, you guys have a million projects. We'll link them all, covering them all. Thank you for swinging by. We know you got to go. Thank you for coming on Thriller Talk.
Thanks for having us, man. We really love talking to you guys. I can't wait till we can all be in the same room next year.
Yeah, we had a great time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it'll be a year pretty much this week that we will be together. So let's think of this interview when we see each other next.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.